So, are you getting stuck on some kind of a problem, a decision you need to make, some sort of puzzle you're trying to figure out? My name is Seth Dellinger. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner in Washington, D.C. And typically, I help people who are stuck in their body, maybe can't find a comfortable way to move their shoulder, or they can't exercise without pain, that kind of thing. But what I'd like to talk to you about today isn't so much about the movement of the body, except that the body is always going to tell you what's going on in terms of the stages of being stuck or getting unstuck. So I'd like to talk about three different kind of versions of how this happens. When we're bored, when we're doing our best but what we're doing just doesn't seem to be working, and then when we're totally frustrated, like nothing's working. All right. So for the boredom thing, I'll give you an example. When I was in my Feldenkrais training, which was typically really fascinating and a lot of fun, I was in a lecture one day that kind of, at the end, it was time to do some logistics discussion. And it was like, okay, this is the date that this is going to happen, and you have to have these things done by this deadline. And it was not that exciting, right? But then there were people in the room who were really confused about it. People started putting up their hands, asking questions, and we had to go over and over and over this, right? So it was kind of like, really? Oh my gosh. And some of the people who were sitting near me, who, like myself, they didn't really have any questions about logistics and whatnot, they were just pulling their hair out like, oh, why do we have to keep talking about this? So the problem with that is just like, this is the conversation that's happening. You're in the room, maybe, the circumstances are that you can't leave, and so you're fighting with reality. You can't change reality, you can't change how it is. But what you can do is treat boredom as an invitation to creativity. So, simple thing, I realized what was going on, and I happened to be writing a number of blog posts those days. I just took out my notebook and I started jotting down some ideas for the next blog post I was going to write. All of a sudden, I'm not stuck fighting with this situation, and I'm actually doing something I want to do just because I sort of paused for a moment and saw, hey, I can do something else in this situation. So treat your boredom as an invitation to creativity. What's possible that maybe you hadn't considered, or what's possible inside the constraints of this situation? In this case, there was another option besides just listening to this thing that I find boring and unimportant to me, and just putting up with it, or tearing my hair out. So, okay, this isn't working. Let's say you're working on some kind of a project and you do everything you think should be done, and it's not working. It's not working. And I don't know what else to do. I'm doing this thing, it's not working. Well, the problem is, the more I try, the more effort I make. And yet, if it doesn't lead me anywhere, I just get increasingly tired. And the only solution I have is to repeat and maybe to use more effort, right? And so if it's not working already, okay, in some situations, maybe lifting a weight, doing certain things, more effort, more willpower might do the job. But generally speaking, something else is wrong. So again, I can think that my options are to just keep pushing, or if I push too much and I just get tired, it's like, oh, just give up, right? Neither of those options is really great. So what's a third option? Well, I can slow things way down, right? Now, something to keep in mind is that every single thing we do, we have to have some thought in our head to map out what we're about to do. Even if it's just walking down the street, you don't think very much at this point about putting one foot in front of the other, but at a certain point you did have to figure that out, and you do have an image of walking in your brain that allows you to walk. So in the situation you're in, whatever you're doing, there's some image you have in your head of what you're doing. So what if you slow things way down? That means we're putting aside accomplishing the task for now, but you just go through the steps very slowly so that you can pay more attention to everything that's going on. If you do that, is it possible to discover the resistance? Where in the process is something getting gummed up? Or literally, where in your body do you feel something tenses up or something, is bracing for, okay, I just need to use more force? That is actually part of the image of what you were doing. So if you assume something is difficult, you prepare for difficulty. Okay, here I go. But what if that same thing were to be incredibly easy? Now, we haven't accomplished the task yet, but if we know that this is a task that can be accomplished, maybe we've seen other people do it, well, then potentially no struggle is necessary. So if you just assume you could accomplish what you need to do without struggle, and don't think this is magic and suddenly it's going to happen, but begin the action as if there's no struggle involved, what happens? And sometimes what happens is that you don't complete the task, but you unlock one little piece, right? It's like you answer a small question instead of that big question that you wanted to get to, and that you still want to get to eventually. But if you slow down and if you examine what's going on, you may well be able to figure this out. So if we use the example of the body moving through space, if you're walking and having pain, if you walk in slow motion, you have the opportunity to notice, what are you doing with your feet? What's going on in your hip joints? What do your shoulders do? What's happening in the ribs, in the neck? Whatever it is, but you can start to identify a place where perhaps there's some extra work going on or some lack of coordination, some uncomfortable feeling. And then by working to resolve that little issue, maybe the larger issue of walking becomes clearer. A basic principle to remember is that no matter what you are doing in any moment, you could say that you are doing 4 things simultaneously. You are sensing, that is, you're taking in the environment, you're feeling things, hearing things, seeing things, right? Your perception. You're feeling something, you're in some kind of a mood, good mood, bad mood, but you're in some kind of a mood, and that's probably coloring what you're doing. You're thinking, you have a certain idea, it's not always verbalized, but there is a sort of an assumption. Again, there's like a plan or an opinion. And there's the doing, there's the actual carrying out of the task. But it could be that everything you're doing task-wise is more or less correct, but it's your mood, or it's the assumption that you're operating on. So thinking, sensing, feeling, and doing, any 4 of these elements could be a place to create a new variation. And you can just experiment, right? Change one of those little things, and maybe you'll discover that there's a change in the level of internal resistance or resistance somehow in the task that you're trying to work out. So another way to look at this is to think about the image in terms of your motivations. Is your idea of what you're doing based on what you really think you need to do, or is it based on something you heard somewhere, right? Some external authority about how this should be done. Now, anything you learned from another person might be good information, but then again, it might not be. Have you tested it out? Have you tried alternatives to what was given to you? And, this can often be like a moral thing. I should do it this way. I see people all the time who come in, and I'm the Feldenkrais guy, so they say, oh, I should be having this certain kind of posture. And I'll always say, are you comfortable or not? Because, we can have an idea of what good posture looks like, but good posture also should be comfortable. So if I'm trying to perform some kind of good posture and I'm craning my neck the whole time to do it, well, that's not really working, and I'm trapped in someone else's idea about my posture. maybe the issue is there's some distinction, there's some difference between A and B somewhere in your problem that you really can't tell the difference. A equals B in your world, but actually A and B are not the same thing. So where do you notice in this thing that you're doing that something's just vague, something's just fuzzy? Could you slow down there, and could you try to feel into or observe or ask more questions about that particular thing? And something that's worth noticing too is that sometimes as we go along, we will feel something strange. I'm trying to solve this problem, or I'm trying to think through something, and I come up with an option or I come up with an insight, but it just feels strange, doesn't feel right. Well, before we throw it out, let's remember there's a difference between what's familiar, what I'm used to. So, I come home to my house and, oh, that's my place, I feel good, I feel comfortable. Well, hopefully it's comfortable at home, but really home is familiar. Some people's homes are not very comfortable places to be, and yet they go home and they settle somewhat because they're in familiar surroundings. Okay, so we want to notice, is this thing really uncomfortable because it doesn't work, or is it just unfamiliar? Okay, lastly, let's just talk about frustration. Like, God damn it, this is impossible. I can't do this. I'm a failure. Not a good situation, right? In fact, the key thing that tells you that you are completely frustrated is you've just given up on looking for new options. So we just talked about ways of finding new options, but we're not even at that stage yet. We're just so frustrated that we're just convinced nothing works, or I'm somehow defective in myself, right? There's just nothing that can be done. Well, this is never going to work, no matter what different strategies are. So we need to step out of that. And it is so simple, but we forget this. When we're in that place, time speeds up. That's the place where we tend to go into, let me push, and just keep doing the thing that hasn't worked, and do it more and do it harder until, we do exhaust ourselves, and then we give up. And so we just need to stop. Stop everything. Come back to the body. Feel the breath. Feel the connection to the ground below. Take in the environment. Oh, okay, here I am. I'm in this present moment. I'm here. It's okay. And when we slow things down, we can ask a question. So maybe I only see two options, and I don't like either one. It's like that Clash song. Should I stay or should I go? Stay doesn't look any good. Go doesn't look any good. Well, maybe what I'm going to need to do in this situation is some variation on one of those two. But how am I going to do it? How am I going to stay? I could stay with many different kind of attitudes, or I could stay and invoke several different other elements that I bring in. I don't know, I'm staying home tonight, but I could order takeout, I could watch a movie. It's not just that I'm unable to go out and do the thing I wanted to do because let's say it's too expensive, or because, I don't know, I can't get a reservation at the restaurant I want to go to, whatever it is. But if I'm sort of stuck with the one option, again, inside that option, just like that place where I was in my training and everyone was like pulling out their hair because they had to listen to some boring Q&A about logistics. Well, actually, what can I do inside of this situation? And the only way to get there is to slow down. Again, maybe I'll only solve a partial problem, not the whole problem, but I'm back in my agency. I can be connected to what really is possible, and I can do something. So if you want a little rule of thumb to remember, you must always have at least 3 options for whatever you're doing. If it's just like try and fail, not good enough. We need a third choice. And usually all we need to do is slow down, step back, breathe, and then ask a new question. And if it seems like there's only those two options, then as we look at one of them, maybe give up isn't give up, it becomes take a rest. I have no fresh ideas, but I'm just going to take a rest and I'm going to come back. Maybe I'll go for a walk, maybe I'll talk to a friend. So, but in order to do that, we really do have to stay in the body. We really do have to stay grounded. That thing about this is impossible, I'm a failure, the way that feels in the body is everything's tight, constricted, time speeds up. It's like, have to do something now, and even though it's no good, I'm just going to do something, which almost generally never works. So coming back, feeling that we're here and now, and remembering you have three options. All right, so I'll be making more videos like this soon. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If you'd like my guidance to work through any kind of problem that you're dealing with in heart, body, or mind, be happy to do that with you. There's a link below. You can book a free call. And if you enjoy the channel, please subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.